How to debate like a liberal. It's quite simple, folks. There's just a few key elements you have to get right, and if you get these right, you can sound exactly like a liberal. It's quite simple if you follow my advice. Now, rule number one, and you have to follow this, accuse the other side of racism. That, I cannot stress how important that is in your strategy. Accusing the other side of hating black people, it matters. I mean, if you don't accuse them of hating black people, then what else do you have to stand on? I mean, if you're going to debate like a liberal, you have to bring up the issue of race, no matter what, because if you don't, well, then you don't really have an argument, do you? So it's very important, and you have to kind of establish that at the beginning. Remember, if someone's against affirmative action or welfare, it's not because they have different opinions. It has to do with race, and you have to drive that point home every 10 seconds and accuse the other person of racism. Now that's key. You have to start that no matter what. And it doesn't even have to be about welfare or affirmative action. Just remember, the key is to bring up racism. Talking about the minimum wage? Well, if you want to get rid of that, you're racist. Talking about Social Security? Why? So old black people can starve to death? Talking about, let's see, gun control. Why? So the rich white people can get all those guns and kill people with? Remember, it's all about race, and you have to bring up race no matter what you're debating. Another key of how to debate like a liberal is you have to accuse the other side of hating poor people. Now that's also important. Now you don't have to directly say, oh, you hate poor people. You just have to kind of make snide remarks about how, well, if you really knew what it was like to be poor. Now see, condescension is key. It's kind of like the flour in a cake. It's sort of the binding agent that all keeps it all together is condescension. And that's one of the major keys if you're trying to debate like a liberal does. It's very important. You have to flaunt your education. If you've ever been to a university, even for like a week, you have to remind your opponent that you're a college student or a college grad or you have a degree or you're just well educated in general. You always have to remind them to let them know that you're both smarter than them as well as to put yourself in contrast with how stupid your opposition are. Because as you know, if you debate as a liberal, you always assume that your opponents are completely uneducated, know nothing about everything, and are probably mentally retarded. So you have to use small words too. That's another key issue. Small words and condescension. That's really, really important. Now, a few other strategies you might want to consider. A few other strategies you might want to consider is, in addition to pointing out how they're racist and how they hate poor people, you also want to make arguments saying how they want to live in some sort of anarchic society like Mad Max and how everything's going to go to hell and all kinds of stuff, how bad it's going to be. Like, say, for instance, if you don't believe that the government should be in charge of A, B, or C, then you want none of that in any capacity whatsoever, and you want nothing, and you want some sort of crazy anarchy to occur otherwise. Like, for instance, if you say the government shouldn't be in charge of healthcare, then you have to accuse your opponent of not wanting healthcare at all, allowing evil rich people to get all the healthcare in the world and no one else to get any, and everyone starves and dies and has nothing, and they all get sick and cancer, and they have to eat cat food because they go into poverty and from debt. And yeah, see, that's the key. Now, you can't say that they want an alternative system that's based on voluntary exchange and private property and free markets. You have to say that they want no healthcare whatsoever, and you have to assume they just want people to die because they're poor and because they're black. That's another reason why they want people to die. Or regulations. Let's say that you're opposed to some regulations like licensing for doctors or something. Say, then you want no oversight whatsoever, and you want anyone to go to any doctor whatsoever, and there's going to be no free market alternatives to like licensing or safety or anything, or like private watchdog groups on businesses, it's just going to be a complete crazy hellhole, and you don't think there should be shit, any oversight in any capacity, including free market, or you have to condescendingly say, well, that would never work, or, well, it's good in theory, but you see, as a educated, enlightened individual of a progressive persuasion, I know that you're a fucking retard, knuckle-dragging, racist, conservative, Bible-thumping asshole. Oh yeah, you have to bring up how they're religious too. Like, you just assume that they're like some knuckle-dragging creationist retard who, oh well, the Bible says that God created everything and we are God's children. Okay, so you can't criticize Romney because he's a free marketer, and see, that's the kind of person you have to assume your opposition is. Because when you just assume they're that kind of person, it makes it much easier to win arguments, which, as a liberal, you always credit yourself with doing, no matter what. Now, there's some things you have to avoid, like facts. And see, facts are really pesky when you're trying to debate as a liberal, because oftentimes they stand in the way or they make your argument cloudy, and so that's why I've instructed you to use your strong points, emotions, and class warfare, appealing to racism, and accusing of racism or whatever, and strongly, strongly avoiding facts. Don't look at like an evidence basis of like, say, how a minimum wage makes people way poorer than they otherwise would have been. Instead, just say, it's wrong that if we don't have minimum wage, man, it's gonna be like bad, man, and you just hate poor people. See, that's what you have to do. You have to keep the emphasis on why they hate poor people, racism. You have to always manage to like mingle it together with condescension, and yeah, that's the basic strategy you have to use if you're debating as a liberal.